Observer Talmech adjusted the viewing screen in his quarters aboard the silent Watcher. The ship hung in orbit above the human colony world, invisible to the primitive sensors below. For 40 years, he had studied military conflicts across the galaxy. He had watched the Corax raiders crush entire civilizations. He had documented the fall of the Hen Empire. He had seen war in all its forms. This assignment should have been simple. The humans were newcomers to space travel. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons used chemical propellants instead of plasma. They had no shields worth mentioning. By every measure the Confederacy used, they were barely ready to leave their home world. Yet here they were, fighting the Corax raiders over a mining colony. Talmech pulled up the mission brief on his data pad. The Confederacy Council wanted a full tactical assessment before offering humanity membership in the galactic community. Standard procedure. Every species had to prove they could defend themselves and contribute to collective security. He studied the files on human biology. They were fragile creatures. Their bones broke easily. They could survive in only a narrow range of temperatures. They needed constant food and water. They lived for barely a century, sometimes less. Most troubling, they had only recently stopped fighting wars against each other. The report noted that humans had divided themselves into groups called nations, and these nations had spent thousands of years killing each other. Talmech found this disturbing, but not unusual. Many primitive species went through such phases before achieving unity. He zoomed in on the human base below. It was designated Forward Operating Base Stalwart, cluster of prefabricated buildings surrounded by a basic defensive wall. Approximately 300 human soldiers stationed there, part of something called the 7th Marine Expeditionary Force. The base commander was Colonel DeJoe. Talmech examined his file with interest. The human had fought in 17 major engagements, all against other humans in various conflicts on their home world. He had survived injuries that would have killed most species. The file listed several medals, though Talmech did not understand their significance. More interesting was the command structure. Unlike V-Lion forces, which used efficient designation codes, humans gave each soldier an individual name. They organized themselves into small units with personal bonds rather than optimal efficiency groups. Talmech made a note to investigate whether this primitive social structure created tactical weaknesses. He selected a unit to observe closely. Sergeant Jai Wu commanded a squad of 5 soldiers. The file showed she had been in the military for 8 years, an incredibly short time by galactic standards. Most Villian officers trained for 20 years. Before seeing combat, her squad members were equally inexperienced. Corporal Huney served as their medic. He was only 24 years old. Private Yang Mi handled communications and was even younger. At 22, Private Taeyang operated their heavy weapons, a chemical propellant machine gun that seemed absurdly primitive. Private Boa worked as their scout, despite being the smallest member of the team. Talmech deployed his observation drones. The microscopic devices would follow the squad and record everything. He settled back in his chair, expecting a routine documentation of defensive tactics. Attack came without warning. Talm screens flashed red as his sensors detected incoming Corfax dropships. 12 vessels carrying at least 200 raiders. The Corax were known for their brutality and their effectiveness. They had terrorized this sector for decades. Even Confederacy forces treated them with caution. The human base should have been doomed. Talmadge watched as alarms blared. Across the compound, human soldiers poured out of their barracks, moving to defensive positions. With surprising speed, he focused his drones on Sergeant Jew and LT Unc and GT's squad. She was shouting orders, her voice calm. Despite the chaos, Hyanik set up the aid station in Building 3. Yumi, I need communications with Colonel DeJoe Ho. Now, Taeyong, take your gun to the north wall. Bora, get me eyes on their landing zone. The squad moved without hesitation, no debate. The Corfax ships landed 200 m from the base perimeter. Talmadge had seen this tactic before. The raiders would establish a fire base, then methodically reduce the human defenses with superior firepower. Standard doctrine called for the humans to hunker down, call for reinforcements, and wait for relief. First Corax warriors emerged from their ships. They stood nearly 3 m tall, covered in natural armor plates. Their plasma rifles could punch through standard military barriers. They began their advance with confident precision. Then something happened that made Talmadge lean forward in his chair. The humans attacked. Sergeant Jai Wu led her squad out through a side gate, moving directly toward the Corax position, not to establish a defensive line, not to delay them. They were charging straight at an enemy force that outnumbered them 10 to 1. What are they doing? Talmadge whispered to his empty quarters. Young Mi ran alongside her sergeant, carrying her communications equipment. Talmadge watched in disbelief as plasma bolts struck the ground around her. She did not seek cover. She dropped to one knee in the open and began calling out coordinates for artillery support. Yannick was supposed to be at the aid station. Instead, he ran forward with the assault team, his medical bag bouncing on his back when one of the other human soldiers fell. Hyanik sprinted through a crossfire zone to reach him. Taeyang set up his machine gun on a small rise that offered no protection whatsoever. He began firing in controlled bursts. In Talmadge's audio sensors picked up something strange. Human was singing, actually singing, while enemy fire poured around him. Bora had somehow circled around the entire Corfax position. Talmadge lost track of her for several minutes, then spotted her behind enemy lines, alone, marking targets for the human artillery. The human artillery began firing crude explosive shells, nothing like the precision weapons the Confederacy used. But they fell exactly where Yumi directed them, tearing into the Corax formation. Colonel DeJoe appeared on Talmadge's screen, leading 2 more squads out of the base. The commander was not directing the battle from safety. He was in front of his troops, weapon in hand, charging toward the enemy. The Corfax, who had been advancing with confidence, suddenly found themselves in a desperate fight. They tried to regroup, but the humans gave them no time. Sergeant Jew and LT Unc and GT's squad hit their flank while Colonel DeJoe's force struck from the front. Talmadge watched the Corfax break. They retreated to their ships in disorder, something he had never seen them do. The humans did not simply let them go. They pursued, firing at the landing craft as they lifted off. The entire battle lasted 18 minutes. Talmadge sat in stunned silence, reviewing the footage. By every tactical Analysis model he knew the humans should have lost. They had been outnumbered, outgunned, and technologically inferior. Their tactics violated every principle of modern warfare, yet they had won. He began writing his preliminary report, his manipulators trembling slightly as he typed. After 40 years of military observation, he found himself using a phrase he never expected to write. Recommend immediate threat level reassessment. Human combat behavior does not conform to any known tactical doctrine. Further observation required. Talmach looked at his screens, watching the humans tend their wounded and repair their defenses. Sergeant Jai Wu was helping Hunnic carry an injured soldier. Yumi was already checking her equipment for the next fight. Taeyang was reloading his primitive weapon and laughing about something. They looked so fragile, so primitive, so weak. So why did Talmach suddenly feel afraid? 3 days had passed since the first attack. Talmach had not slept well during that time. His species needed only 4 hours of rest per cycle, but his mind kept replaying the battle footage. He had watched it 17 times, analyzing every moment, trying to understand what he had witnessed. The preliminary report he sent to Confederacy Command had received a dismissive response. Observer Talmach, your assessment appears emotionally influenced. Humans are Category 3 species at best. Continue observation and provide objective analysis. Objective analysis. Talmach had spent 4 decades providing objective analysis. He knew what he had seen. His sensors detected movement in the human base. Below, Sergeant Ju and LT Unk and GT S Squad was preparing for a patrol. Talmach directed his drones to follow them. Perhaps extended observation would either confirm or dismiss his concerns. The squad moved out through the main gate at dawn. Their mission, according to intercepted communications, was to check several outlying sensor stations. A routine patrol, nothing dangerous expected. Talmach noticed how they moved. Bora walked 20 meters ahead of the others. Her eyes constantly scanned the terrain. Taeyang brought up the rear, his heavy weapon ready despite the weight. Youngmi stayed in the center, monitoring communications. Hyan walked near Sergeant Jai Wu, his medical equipment carefully organized. They moved through broken terrain, around rock formations and dried stream beds. The planet's twin suns climbed higher, and the temperature rose. Talmach checked his readings. 43 degrees. Hot enough to be uncomfortable for humans, though not dangerous yet. 2 hours into the patrol, Bora raised her fist. The entire squad stopped. Instantly, she pointed to the ground, then made several hand signals. Talmach's translation software interpreted them. Tracks fresh Corax. Sergeant Ju moved forward to examine the tracks herself. She studied them for nearly a minute, then spoke quietly into her radio. We have Corax tracks heading west toward Sensor Station 3. Looks like a scouting party, maybe 6 individuals. Colonel DeJoe's voice crackled back. Copy that. Return to base. We will send a full platoon to investigate. The logical response. The safe response. 6 Corax warriors were more than a match for 5 humans. Negative, sir. Sergeant Ju replied. They are heading toward the civilian mining camp at Ridge 7. If we wait for the platoon, those miners will be dead before help arrives. We are moving to intercept. There was a pause, then Colonel Dejo spoke again. Understood, you have authorization. Reinforcements will follow your position. Do not engage unless necessary. To protect civilians, yes, sir, Talmadge. Felt that strange fear again. They were going after 6 Corax warriors, 5 humans against 6 Corfax. He had watched Corax warriors tear through armored vehicles. He had seen them rip steel doors off their hinges. The squad picked up their pace, moving at a run. Now, Bora stayed ahead following the tracks. They covered 3 km in 20 minutes. An impressive pace given the terrain and heat. The mining camp appeared ahead. Cluster of prefabricated shelters and excavation equipment. Talmadge counted 12 civilian humans working there, unaware of the danger approaching. Bora signaled again. The Corfax were close. Sergeant Jai Wu split her squad with quick hand signals. Bora circled left. Taeyang went right to find a firing position. Hyun and Yang Mi stayed with the sergeant. They crept forward using the mining equipment for cover. Talmadge spotted the Corax first, 6 warriors. Just as predicted, moving toward the mining camp from the west. They carried plasma rifles and war combat armor. Against 12 unarmed miners, it would be a massacre. The logical tactic would be to call in artillery, then evacuate the civilians during the confusion. The humans had time for that. The Corfax were still 200 m away. Instead, Sergeant Jiu stood up and opened fire. Her weapon made a sharp cracking sound. Chemical propellants driving metal projectiles. Primitive, loud, inefficient. 1 Corax warrior stumbled. His armor damaged. The other 5 turned toward her, their plasma rifles coming up. That was when Taeyang opened fire from their flank. His machine gun roared, a sustained burst that caught 2 Corax in the open. Bora fired from the other side, her shots precise and measured. The Corfax, suddenly caught in a crossfire, did what any trained soldier would do. They sought cover and began to return fire. Their plasma bolts turned the mining equipment into molten slag, but they were no longer advancing on the civilians. Young Mi, Sergeant Jiu shouted, "Get those miners to cover." Now, the young private ran into the open directly toward the mining camp. Plasma bolts seared the air around her. One shot passed so close to her head that Talmadge's sensors detected burning hair. She did not slow down. Young Mi reached the first miner, grabbed him, and physically pulled him toward shelter. Move, all of you, move into the equipment shed. The miners, finally understanding the danger, ran for cover. Young Mi helped an older human who was moving too slowly, supporting him as they ran. A plasma bolt struck the ground at their feet. Young Mi stumbled, but kept moving, kept helping the old man. Hyun ran to join her, helping gather the civilians. Talmadge watched in disbelief as the medic exposed himself to enemy fire again and again, making sure every civilian reached safety. Meanwhile, Sergeant Jai Wu advanced, not away from the enemy, toward them. She moved from cover to cover, firing in short bursts. Each time the Corax tried to reposition, Taeyang and LT Unk and GT's machine gun forced them down. Each time they focused on Taeyang, Bora hit them from another angle. 1 Corax warrior charged at Sergeant Jiu and LT Unk and GT's position. He was massive, his armor scarred from countless battles. His plasma rifle glowed as he fired. Continuously, the sergeant's cover began to melt. She rolled out from behind it. Coming up on one knee, her weapon clicked empty. The Corfax roared and charged, closing the distance in. Second, Sergeant Ju dropped her rifle and drew a knife, against a 3M. Tall armored warrior the Corfax swung. His rifle like a club, she ducked under. It moving inside his reach, her knife found a gap in his armor at the joint. Where his arm met his torso, she drove it in deep, twisted, and ripped it free. The warrior staggered. She kicked his knee, a joint humans shared with Corfax. It buckled as he fell. She grabbed his own rifle and shot him with it. Then she picked up her empty rifle, reloaded it, and kept advancing. The remaining Corax began to retreat. Talmech checked his tactical display. Reinforcements were still 5 minutes away. The Corax could have broken contact, escaped to fight another day. The humans did not let them. Bora anticipated their retreat route and was already there. Her weapon ready, Taeyang shifted position, cutting off another escape path. Corax found themselves trapped, surrounded by 5 humans who should not have been able to threaten them at all. The battle ended quickly after that. When the reinforcements arrived, they found Sergeant Jai Wu and LT Unk and GT S squad tending to wounded civilians. Hunnick was treating a miner who had been hit by debris. Yumi was checking her communications equipment, which had been damaged by a plasma bolt. Taeyang sat beside his machine gun, methodically cleaning it. Boa was already scouting the perimeter, making sure no more threats approached. All 5 humans were injured in some way. Burns, cuts, and bruises covered them. None had mentioned it. None had stopped working. Colonel Dezhou arrived with the reinforcements. He surveyed the scene, the dead Corfax, the saved civilians, his exhausted squad. He walked up to Sergeant Ju and spoke quietly. "Good work, thank you, sir. Just doing our job, just doing their job." Talmech replayed those words in his mind. That evening he wrote another report. This one was longer, more detailed, filled with tactical analysis and combat footage. He concluded with a statement that he knew would be ignored. Human military doctrine is fundamentally different from all known combat systems. They do not fight to minimize casualties. They do not fight to achieve optimal outcomes. They fight to win regardless of cost to themselves. This makes accurate threat assessment impossible using standard models. He sent the report and sat back in his chair. On his screens, Sergeant Ju and LT Unk and GT S squad was sharing a meal in their barracks. They were laughing about something. Young Mi was showing the others her damaged radio. Taeyang was singing again. They had just fought 6 Corfax warriors in one. They had been injured, had nearly died, had saved 12 civilians who would otherwise be dead, and they were laughing. Talmech did not understand humans at all. 3 weeks passed. Talmech had sent 4 more reports to Confederacy Command. Each one was acknowledged and essentially ignored. The Council had decided humans were Category 3, and no amount of field observation seemed likely to change their minds. Talmech no longer cared about the Council's opinion. He continued observing because he needed to understand. The question that haunted him was simple: how were the humans so effective despite being so primitive? He had expanded his observation network. Now he monitored not just Sergeant Jai Wu and LT Unk and GT S squad, but several other human units as well. The pattern remained consistent. Humans took risks no sane soldier would take. They refused to abandon positions that should be Abandoned, they fought when they should. Retreat, and they kept winning. A new human had arrived at forward operating base stalwart. Captain Mo, a special operations officer. Her file was heavily classified, but Talmage had managed to access parts of it. She had conducted operations behind enemy lines on 7 different worlds. Her survival rate was listed as improbable. Captain Mio moved differently than the other humans. She was perfectly calm at all times, her voice never rising above a conversational tone. This disturbed Talmage more than the screaming charges of regular soldiers. At least those seemed like emotional responses. Minso and LT Unk and GT calmness suggested something else entirely. Today the humans were conducting a joint training exercise with a Velian peacekeeping unit that had recently arrived in the system. Talmage watched with interest. Perhaps seeing humans and Velians work together would provide useful comparative data. The exercise was simple, a simulated hostage rescue. The Verlian Commander Group Leader Felnar explained the scenario carefully. Hostiles held a building. Hostages were on the 2nd floor. The goal was to neutralize the hostiles with minimal casualties on both sides. The Velian team went first. They approached methodically, using proper cover and movement techniques. They deployed sensor drones to map the building interior. They established a perimeter and set up shield generators. After 14 minutes of preparation, they executed a coordinated entry through multiple access points. Total time from start to finish, 18 minutes. Hostage casualties in the simulation, 2, a respectable performance by any standard measure. Then came the humans. Sergeant Ju and LT Unk and GTS squad approached the same building. They studied it for perhaps 30 seconds. Then Yumi kicked in the front door and threw in 2 grenades. The squad entered while the explosions were still echoing. Total time from start to finish, 90 seconds. Hostage casualties in the simulation, 0. Group leader Felnar protested. You used explosives. You risked the hostages, but we didn't hit them. Sergeant Ju replied calmly, and in 90 seconds the enemy had no time to execute anyone. The Verlian officer began explaining proper procedures, but an alarm interrupted him. A real alarm. Talmage sensors detected an emergency signal from a nearby colony. The base command center erupted with activity. Talmage listened to the communications. A Corax battle fleet had appeared in orbit around Colony 7, a civilian settlement 3 light hours away. 8 warships, thousands of raiders. The colony's small defense force was already overwhelmed. Group leader Felnar immediately began calculating response times. We can have a relief force assembled in 6 hours. I will request authorization from Confederacy Command. How long until everyone in that colony is dead, Captain? Mio interrupted. The Velian officer looked uncomfortable. Based on typical Corfax tactics, the civilian population will be eliminated in approximately 4 hours. Then we leave. In 10 minutes, Talmage thought he had misheard. 10 minutes to mount a military operation against a battle fleet. Captain Mo ignored him. She turned to Colonel DeJoe. Sir, I need 2 transports, everyone you can spare, and all the heavy weapons we can load in the next 10 minutes. The colonel did not hesitate. You have it. Who is going? My team and Anyone who volunteers, Sergeant Gio. Stepped forward immediately, my squad. Volunteers, you just returned from a month-long deployment, Colonel DeJoe. Said, yes, sir. We volunteer one by one. Every human in the room stepped forward. Every single one, Group Leader Felnar, was stunned. This is madness. You cannot fight a battle fleet with 2 transports. You need proper planning. Proper equipment, proper timing is what we need, Captain Meal said, and we are running out of it. 8 minutes. Later, 2 human transports lifted off. Talmech had redirected his observation drones to follow them, his scientific detachment completely abandoned. He had to see how this ended. The transports were designed to carry cargo, not fight warships. They had no weapons, minimal armor, and slow engines inside. 63 humans checked their equipment. Silence. The flight to Colony 7 took 3 hours. During that time, Talmech watched Captain Meal brief her teams. The plan was insane. They would bypass the orbital battle and drop directly onto the colony surface. They would insert behind Corax lines and fight their way to the civilians. What about extraction? Someone asked. We hold until the Velian relief force arrives. 3 hours maybe. 4 to 3 hours. 63 humans against thousands of Corax raiders. Talmech calculated their survival probability at less than 2%. They knew it too. He could see it in their faces. They understood the odds perfectly. None of them complained. None of them asked to be left behind. Insertion went wrong immediately. Corax warships detected the transports and opened fire. The lead transport took a direct hit to its engines. The pilot fought the controls trying to guide the crippled ship down. They crashed 50 km from the colony. Talmech watched through his drones as the humans pulled themselves from the wreckage. 23 were injured, some badly. 4 were dead. Their bodies carefully moved to one side and covered with blankets. Bora had a piece of metal lodged in her leg. Hunic pulled it out, treated the wound, and tied a bandage around it. She tested her weight on the leg. Winston nodded. Can you run? Captain Mia asked. If I have to, you will have to. Talmech checked the distance again. 50 km through hostile territory with wounded soldiers. In 4 hours we run. Captain Meal said simply. They ran. Talmech had studied human physiology extensively over the past weeks. Humans were endurance predators on their home world. They could maintain a steady pace for hours, something most species could not do. But 50 km in 4 hours, carrying wounded and equipment, they did it in 3 hours and 40 minutes. Talmech watched them arrive at the colony as the last defensive positions were collapsing. The humans were exhausted, injured, running on determination alone. Smart thing to do would be to find cover, wait for the Virian relief force, and survive. They charged straight into the heaviest fighting instead. What followed was the most brutal combat Talmech had ever witnessed. The humans fought at close range in buildings and streets where their primitive weapons were just as effective as Corax plasma rifles, more effective. Sometimes because humans seemed to have no fear of close combat, Hunic treated wounded colonists while firing his pistol at Corfax warriors. When he ran out of ammunition, he picked up a fallen enemy weapon and kept fighting. Young Mi lost her radio in the crash. When she needed to call in artillery support, she took a Corax communication device. She took it by killing its owner in hand-to-hand combat, then she used it to coordinate the human defense. Taeyang's machine gun overheated and jammed. Without hesitation, he picked up Korfak. Weapons, human weapons, anything he could find. At one point Talmage watched him swing a piece of pipe at a raider's head. Bora was shot twice. More, she continued fighting even when Hunnic begged her to let him evacuate her to the aid station. Not till everyone else is safe, she said. Sergeant Jai Wu was wounded 3 times, a plasma burn on her arm, a deep cut across her ribs, a broken bone in her hand. She ignored all of it, directing her squad, protecting civilians, refusing to stop. The VLIN relief force arrived 4 hours after the human insertion. They expected to find the colony destroyed and the human force dead. Instead, they found 4,000 colonists alive and 62 humans still fighting. Only 1 more human had died in the battle itself. Group leader Felnar stood in the smoking ruins of the colony, staring at the exhausted humans. How, he asked. How did you do this? Captain Mo, covered in blood and burns, looked at him with those calm eyes. We did what needed to be done. That night Talmage sat in his quarters and typed a new report. His manipulators shook as he worked. The words came slowly, carefully. I must revise my previous assessments. Humans do not fight like any known species. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They refuse to accept any losses at all. They will sacrifice themselves to save others, even strangers. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. I no longer know how to classify their threat level. He paused, then added one final line. I am afraid of what we have discovered. Talmage had stopped pretending this was routine observation. For the first time in his 40-year career, he was personally involved. He needed to understand these humans, not just document them. The hospital ship Mercy's Hand had arrived to treat the wounded from Colony 7. Talmage requested permission to visit, claiming he needed to interview survivors for his report. The real reason was different. He needed to speak with the humans, to ask them why did they fight this way? Why did they take such terrible risks? Why did they refuse to retreat even when retreat was the logical choice? The medical bay was crowded with wounded humans. Some would recover quickly. Others faced long months of healing. Few would never fight again. Yet the atmosphere was not what Talmage expected. Instead of mourning or anger, he heard laughter, actual laughter, echoed through the corridors. He found Private Taeyang first. The heavy weapons specialist was in a medical pod being treated for severe burns across his back and arms. Human medical system was primitive but effective, using the body's own healing ability rather than advanced regeneration technology. Talmage approached carefully. Private Taeyang, may I speak with you? The young human opened his eyes. The alien observer. Right, sure. I have got nothing better to do for the next week. I want to understand why you volunteered for the Colony 7 operation. You knew the odds of survival were extremely low. Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Did they tell you about my sister? Your file mentions a sibling. She is a civilian engineer on another colony. When I was 12, raiders hit her colony. Not Corex, a different group, but the same idea. They came in fast, took what they wanted, killed people who got in their way. My sister hid in a storage container for 6 hours. while they destroyed everything around her. Nobody came to help. The colony was too small, too remote. By the time military ships arrived, it was over. Taeyang shifted in his medical pod, wincing at the pain. She survived, but a lot of people did not, and the whole time she was hiding, she kept thinking, why is nobody coming? Where are they? Soldiers, where's the help? So you joined the military? Yeah, because somebody should come, somebody should help. That is the whole point, is it not? We are supposed to protect people who cannot protect themselves even at the cost of your own life, especially. Then what good is a soldier who only fights when it is safe? Talmage did not have an answer to that. He found Boa. Next, the scout was missing her right leg below the knee. The doctors had amputated it after the battle. She sat in a wheelchair reviewing combat footage on a data pad. What are you watching? Talmage asked. The Colony 7 operation. Trying to see what we could have done better. You saved 4,000 lives against impossible odds. Bora looked up at him with a slight smile. We lost 4 people on the insertion and 1 in the battle. That is 5 people who should still be alive. If I had scouted better, if I had seen the ambush sooner, maybe we do not crash. Maybe those 4 people live. The crash was not your fault. Enemy fire caused it, maybe, but I keep thinking, what if I had spotted that warship 3 seconds earlier? What if I had called the warning faster? 3 seconds could have mattered. But Talmage studied the young human. She had lost a leg and was already analyzing how to fight more effectively next time. You plan to continue serving even after this injury? Of course, they can fit me with a prosthetic. I will be back on duty in 6 months, maybe less if I push the physical therapy. Most species would retire after such an injury. Most species did not grow up on frontier colonies where everybody pulls their weight. I can still shoot. I can still scout. I can still help, so I will. Hunnick was treating patients rather than resting himself. The medic had been awake for 60 consecutive hours, first during the operation and then treating wounded afterward. He was finally being forced to rest. Though he complained about it constantly, they will not let me work, he grumbled when Talmage found him. There are still patients who need care. You need care yourself. You have exhaustion toxins in your system that could cause permanent damage. I am fine. You collapsed twice yesterday. Just tired. That is not the same as unable to help. Talmage sat down beside the medic's bed. Why did you run into that crossfire at Colony 7? 7 times. My sensors counted you, exposing yourself to enemy fire to reach wounded civilians. They were hurt. You could have waited for the fighting to move away from them. They might have died. While I waited, would you wait if someone you could save was dying? I am not a medic, neither am I really. I mean, I've got training, but I am just a kid from a mining town who learned first aid. The thing is, when someone is bleeding in front of you, you do not think about the risk. You think about stopping the bleeding. Young me was joking with other wounded soldiers when Talmage found her. Her communications equipment had been destroyed and she had burns on her hands from using captured Corfax devices. She was teaching another soldier some kind of game involving hand gestures and ridiculous words. She noticed Talmage watching and waved him over. Hey observer, want to learn poker? I do not think so. May I ask you a question? Sure. When your radio was destroyed, you took a Corax Communication device, the footage shows. You fought that raider hand-to-hand for nearly a minute before you won. Why not? Fall back and get a replacement radio. From another human, no time artillery. Needed coordinates right then. If I waited, people would die, but you could have died maybe, but I did not, and because I got those coordinates out, the artillery took out that Corfax position, which saved a bunch of civilians in Building 12. Good trade, a good trade. You risked your life for equipment. Yumi laughed. I risked my life for the people the equipment would save. Big difference. Finally Talmadge found Sergeant Jai Wu. She was sitting alone, a small observation lounge looking out at the stars. Her arm was in a cast, her ribs were bandaged, and she moved with obvious pain, but her eyes were clear and calm. May I sit? Talmadge asked. It is a free ship. They sat in silence for several minutes. Then Talmadge asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. Why do you not value your own survival? We do value it. Your actions suggest otherwise. You take risks no rational soldier should take. Sergeant Jiu turned to look at him. You think we are suicidal and X's, and I think you prioritize the mission over your own lives. No, we prioritize everyone's lives. That is the difference. She gestured at the stars. Out there right now, there are people who need help. Some are in danger, some are dying, some are just scared and alone, and they are thinking, where is the help? When is someone going to come? And you think you must be that help. Somebody has to be. If not us, then who? But what about you? What about your own life? Your own safety? My life matters because of what I do with it. If I live 100 years hiding from danger, what have I done? But if I spend one day protecting someone who cannot protect themselves, that day meant something. Talmadge was quiet, processing this. Finally he said, your species has only been in space for a short time, yet you fight with a skill and determination I have never seen. Where did you learn this? We have always fought. Look at our history. Observer, we have been fighting each other for thousands of years. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas. We got very good at it. We can see honest, and today we got very good at it. That is what concerns me. Your species spent most of its existence killing each other. Yes, and we learned what war costs. We learned what happens when nobody comes to help. We learned that protection is not about being safe. It is about standing between danger and the people who cannot defend themselves. Talmadge accessed the human database. Through his neural link, he had avoided their history until now, focusing only on their current military capabilities. But Sergeant Jiu and LT Unk and GT's words pushed him to look deeper. What he found terrified him. Humans had fought wars that would have destroyed any other species. They had developed weapons that could sterilize entire planets. They had killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They had nearly driven themselves to extinction multiple times, but they had survived. Not just survived, they had learned from each conflict. Each war had taught them new tactics, new strategies, new ways to fight and win. There was a human saying he found in the database: hard times create strong men. Humanity had only known hard times. The galaxy had been at peace for 10,000 years. The Verlian Confederacy had not fought a real war in 8,000 years. Their military forces were ceremonial, their tactics theoretical, their experience minimal. Humans had never stopped fighting. Even now, as they entered the galactic community they brought with them millennia of combat experience, we are not ready for you, Talmech said. Quietly, what the galaxy we are. Not ready for humanity, we have forgotten how to truly fight, you never did, Sergeant Jai Wu smiled sadly. Then maybe you should hope we remain friends. The Verlian High Command Council chamber was designed to inspire awe, the ceiling arched 40 m overhead, covered in displays showing every Confederacy world. The council members sat in a circle, elevated above the floor, looking down at whoever stood in the center to give testimony. Talmech stood in that center now, feeling very small. 60 council members regarded him with expressions ranging from boredom to mild irritation. He had requested this emergency session 3 days ago. The request had been denied twice before being reluctantly approved. They thought he was wasting their time. They would understand soon enough. Council leader Venthos spoke first. Observer Talmech, you have requested this session to present your final assessment of humanity's military capabilities. We hope this will be more objective than your previous reports, which frankly bordered on panic. Talmech bowed respectfully. Council leader, honored members, I have spent 2 months observing human military operations. I have witnessed 9 combat engagements. I have interviewed dozens of human soldiers. I have reviewed their historical records. I stand before you today to present my final assessment. He activated his presentation display. Combat footage from his observations began playing on the chamber screens. The counselors watched with mild interest. I recommend that humanity be classified as a Class 7 threat species. The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted questions. Several stood from their seats. Class 7 was the highest threat classification in Confederacy protocols. It had not been used in 8,000 years. Council leader Venthos raised his hand. For silence, observer, you cannot be serious. Class 7 classification is reserved for species that pose an existential threat to the entire Confederacy. The humans are primitives with chemical weapons and metal ships. Yes, Talmech said calmly, that is what makes them so dangerous. He expanded the display, showing footage from the first battle he had witnessed. Watch carefully. This is 5 human soldiers attacking 200 Corfax raiders. By every tactical model we use, the humans should have lost. They were outnumbered 40-1. They had inferior weapons and no armor. Worth mentioning, the footage played. The counselors watched Sergeant Jew and LT Unk and GT S squad charge directly at the enemy. They saw Yang Mi calling in artillery while under fire. They saw Hunik running through crossfire zones. They saw Taeyang singing while he fought. They won, Talmech said, not by retreating and waiting for support, not by using superior technology. They won by refusing to lose. They have attacked when they should have defended. They advanced when they should have retreated. They took risks that killed them if they were wrong, but won them the battle when they were right. Counselor Marquand spoke up. This proves nothing. Luck and recklessness can sometimes overcome poor odds. It does not make them a threat to us. Talmech had expected this. He changed the display. Then watch this. The Colony 7 operation footage began playing. The counselors watched in silence as 63 humans charged into a force of thousands. They saw the crash. They saw the humans run 50 km through hostile territory. They saw the brutal close quarters battle that followed, 4,000 civilians saved, Talmadge said, against a Corax battle fleet with 2 transport ships and no heavy weapons, human casualties. 5 dead, 23 wounded, Corax casualties. Over 800 dead, hundreds more wounded. Impossible, someone whispered. I verified every detail, my observation. Drones recorded everything. The humans did not use advanced tactics or superior technology. They used determination. They refused to let those civilians die. And because they refused, 4,000 people lived. Counselor Shenva, one of the oldest members, leaned forward. Observer, Talmadge, we acknowledge that humans are brave, perhaps even foolishly so, but bravery does not equal threat level. Why do you fear them? Talmadge had been waiting for this question. He displayed a new image, a timeline of human history, because they have been doing this for thousands of years. While the Confederacy has been at peace, humans have been at war, constant war, war against each other, war against their environment, war against everything that threatened them. They have spent their entire existence learning how to fight. He zoomed in on specific conflicts. This was their first world war, 40 million dead. They fought in frozen trenches, in poison gas, in conditions that would kill most of us in hours. They survived. The display shifted. This was their second world war. 80 million dead. They dropped nuclear weapons on their own planet. They fought on every continent, in every environment. They survived. These are just 2 of hundreds of major conflicts. They have fought wars that would have ended our civilization. They call them world wars, and they had multiple. Every conflict taught them, every battle made them better at violence. Counselor Marquand stood. This only proves they are violent among themselves. It does not mean they will threaten us, does it not? Talmadge changed the display again. Let me show you something else I discovered. Humans have rules for warfare. They call them rules of engagement. These rules restrict how they can fight, where they can use certain weapons, how they must treat prisoners, what targets are forbidden. He paused, letting that sink in. Everything I have shown you, every battle where they seemed unstoppable, was fought with restrictions in place. They were holding back. The chamber fell silent. I accessed their historical records. When humans remove those restrictions, when they decide to fight total war, they become something else entirely. They have a concept called scorched earth. They would destroy everything rather than let an enemy have it. They developed weapons that could kill billions. They planned for mutual assured destruction, where both sides would be annihilated, but neither would surrender. Telm's voice grew quieter. We have been at peace for 10,000 years. We have forgotten what real war looks like. Humans remember. They never stopped preparing for it. Council leader Venthos spoke carefully. I am suggesting that if humanity ever turns its full military capacity against us, we will lose, not might lose. Lose. They are already matching the Corfax despite technological disadvantages. What happens when we give them our technology? What happens when they mount plasma weapons on their ships and learn to build shields? He displayed casualty statistics. In every engagement I observed, humans were outnumbered and outgunned. They won anyway because they fight differently. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They refuse to accept any losses. Every soldier matters to them, every civilian matters, they will sacrifice themselves to save others, even strangers. This makes them unpredictable. Our tactical computers cannot model their behavior because they do not follow logical patterns, they follow something else, something we do not understand. Counselor Shinva asked quietly, "What do you recommend?" Talmech took a deep breath. "I recommend that humanity be offered full Confederacy membership immediately. I recommend we give them access to our technology, our resources, and our support. I recommend we do everything possible to ensure they become our allies rather than our enemies. You want us to reward this aggressive species with membership. I want us to survive. Look at the galaxy around us, the Corax. Raiders have terrorized the sector for decades. We send peacekeeping forces that barely contain them. Humans have been here for 2 months and have dealt them more damage than we have in 20 years. There are other threats out there, the V Empire on our border, the remnants in the Dark Zone, dangers we have tried to manage through diplomacy and containment. What happens when those threats see what humans can do? What happens when our enemies realize there is a species that does not back down, does not negotiate, does not accept defeat? Talmech gestured at the displays. The question is not whether humanity will dominate this galaxy. The question is whether we want them doing it as our allies or our enemies. I very strongly recommend we choose allies, and if they turn on us anyway, Marin challenged, then we were doomed the moment they left their home world. But I do not think they will. I have spoken with many human soldiers. They have principles. They protect the weak. They keep their word. They value honor and loyalty. If we treat them with respect, if we earn their friendship, I believe they will stand beside us. He paused. But if we treat them as primitives, if we dismiss them or try to control them, we will make them into enemies, and that would be the end of us. The council debated for hours. Talmech stood in the center of the chamber, answering questions, showing more footage, providing more analysis. Slowly he watched the counselor's expressions change from skepticism to concern to something close to fear. Finally, council leader Venthos called for a vote, all in favor of granting humanity immediate full membership in the Confederacy. 58 hands rose. Only 2 abstained. None voted against. All in favor of classifying humanity as Class 7 threat species. 43 hands rose this time. The others abstained. Again, none voted against. All in favor of establishing full military cooperation with human forces. 60 hands rose. Unanimous. Council leader Venthos looked at Talmech. Your recommendations are approved. Humanity will be contacted with our offer within the day. Observer Talmech, you are assigned as our liaison to Human Military Command. Try to keep them from terrifying anyone else. Talmech bowed. I will do my best. Council leader that night in his quarters aboard the Silent Watcher, Talmech made a final entry in his personal log. I was ordered to observe humans in battle. I was supposed to assess their capabilities and determine if they were ready to join the galactic community. Instead, I discovered that the galactic community is not ready for them. We have grown soft in our peace. We have forgotten what it means to truly fight, truly sacrifice, truly refuse defeat. Humans remember. They have never forgotten. I am returning to forward operating base. Stalwart tomorrow to deliver the Council's decision. I hope Colonel DeJoe and his soldiers understand what an honor this is. I hope they understand that we are offering them membership not because they need us but because we need them. I hope we have made the right choice. He paused, then added one final line. I'm afraid we have not, but I am more afraid of what would have happened if we had chosen otherwise. On Earth, Colonel DeJoe received the official communication from the Verlian Confederacy: full membership, full technology sharing, full military cooperation. He read it twice, then called his senior officers. Together, we are in, he said simply. Full Confederacy membership. They want us as allies. Captain Mina smiled her unsettling calm smile. Good. Maybe now we can do some real good out here. Sergeant Jew and LT Unk and GT Squad was on leave, recovering from their injuries. When she heard the news, she gathered them together in their barracks. We are official now, she said, part of the big galactic community. Yang Mi grinned. Think they are ready for us? Taeyang laughed. Nobody is ever ready for us. Bo Ra, still in her wheelchair, looked at her squad mates. Think anything will change? Sergeant Jai Wu shook her head. No, we will still be us, still doing what we do, just with better equipment and more people to protect. Good, Hyan said. I was worried we might have to slow down or something. They laughed together. These 5 humans who had changed the galaxy without meaning to, they did not understand that other species found them terrifying. They were just doing their job, protecting people who needed protection somewhere in orbit. Observer Talmach watched them through his drones and whispered a prayer to deities he did not believe in. Please let them stay our friends.